Today's episode is brought to you by RIMOL Greenhouses.
Whether it's tomatoes to market, flowers in the spring, or your family's harvest, growing in a greenhouse protected from the weather provides the right environment that you need for a harvest that you can count on. RIMOL Greenhouses are designed for durability and offer the quality that you need to grow productively year-round. Visit RIMOLGreenhouses.com to get a quote today.
If I may editorialize for a second, I own a RIMOL tunnel. I love it. We built it ourselves, and I really appreciated the quality of the tunnel as well as the customer service we received in the process, so make sure to check them out. Today's episode is also brought to you by Growing for Market magazine. For 31 years, Growing for Market magazine has been the source of practical ideas and information for direct market vegetable and flower growers. All articles are written by farmers who get their hands dirty and know what they're doing. If you do farmers markets, CSA, farm stand, pick your own, florist sales, or wholesaling, whether you're a commercial grower or want to grow like one, subscribe to Growing for Market for the nitty-gritty details of growing, marketing, and the business of small farming. Available as paper magazine and a digital download with thousands of archived articles available. Use the coupon code WORM, that's WORM, to get 25% off any subscription at growingformarket.com. All right, let's jam. Hey, you all, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to the No-Till Market Garden Podcast, episode 13, season 4. Got a great episode for you this week from right here in the Bluegrass with Zach Selby of DreamTime Market Gardens in Kentucky. I had a great time talking to Zach about his small, intensive market garden, not too far from here, but also about his transition from chef to farmer who now sells a lot to chefs. We talk about what he's learned on both sides of this world, some tips for getting into restaurants and managing those relationships, and we discuss selling herbs as a valuable add-on for restaurants and the simple art of growing chives. But first, hey, do you like this podcast? Well, the reason it exists is because of a bunch of really awesome people who see a lot of value in it and give a few bucks every month on Patreon. That's it. That's the whole reason we're able to do this. So if you find value in our work and it's been able to help you a little bit, but you haven't given yet, consider signing up to be a patron at patreon.com/no-till-growers. There are discounts there on merch when we have it, on the Living Soil Handbook and future No-Till Growers events. But also at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs this week to Peter Seeley, Stephen Smith, Veggie Cropper, Scott Snodgrass, and Lucas Brindle. Big thanks to everyone who supports our show in whatever way that you can. Buying a copy of the Living Soil Handbook specifically from no-tillgrowers.com is a great way to do it as well. You can also Venmo us at No-Till Growers, a few bucks to say thanks. We appreciate all the support no matter how it comes, and we will continue to crank out awesome stuff for you like this amazing episode with Zach Selby of DreamTime Market Garden. Zach Selby, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jesse. It's a treat.
Well, and it's a treat to have you. I'm so happy to have you on. I like having a little bit of extra Kentucky love on here. So with that in mind, let's start with where we always do with this podcast. Where are you located? What kind of acreage are you working on? And those sorts of things.
Yeah. I'm in Lexington, Kentucky, central Kentucky. There's a lot of horses around here. I met a lady a year and a half ago who owns 44 acres, just maybe 10 minutes from downtown Lexington. And she invited me out to her farm to check it out after visiting my little backyard farm that I had going on for 4 or 5 years. And we ended up kind of settling on opening up a couple of these older horse pastures. She'd owned this farm for 30 years. And so there's about a 4-acre piece that I'm just kind of getting my footing on, growing, market garden style with the deep compost, 50-foot beds. I think I got like maybe 110 of them just about there. And it's nice. It's a great location. And it's been great soil right out of the gate. Just being an old horse pasture, there's very clean. There's never been anything sprayed on it. It's just like really intense grasses and perennial stuff coming up. So, the chores with that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And Is it 30-inch wide as your beds? You said 50 feet, but is it
Yeah,
30-inch
yeah. I
wide?
do 4-foot centers with the 18-inch walkway and all that. I just wanted to kind of keep it standard because I'm not necessarily someone who makes all their own equipment and stuff. Like I'm not a welder, so I was just kind of trying to form the farm to something that seems to be picking up momentum with all the market gardening tools and stuff coming out. And, it seems to be a good path.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it's nice that we can all kind of standardize around those different tools. Did you raise the beds when you first opened them up? Do you like go through and do, sort of rotary plow and all that stuff?
Yeah, each one has been kind of different. I started out just not knowing exactly how big we were going to have the gardens be. We shoot Phaedra is the lady who owns the farm, and she was just like, just come grow out here and see what you think, and we'll just kind of, take it slow. And so this was in June of 2020. And so then after I came out and saw the farm, I came back like a week later because I'm still working full time as a chef at this point. And I came out and she had an old plow at the farm. She got a little tractor and they plowed over and raked out with chains, maybe like roughly 50 by 100. It was almost there. And so that was how it started. And then I came through and used a meadow creature. I strung up, 25, 50-foot beds. I used the meadow creature and then came back over with like a 7-tine broad fork that Johnny sells. And I did that. I had, there's no road access out here. So I just found somebody that had like a dump trailer. He came out and dumped, maybe it was like 15 yards. And so I spread that on there and it all kind of just got worked into the soil at that point.
Of compost.
Yeah, of compost, sorry. And I just shoveled the walkways. And that's really like for the most part, the only like mechanical tilling that's ever happened out here. And so all of these other plots, which I have, I guess 9 or 10 or something like this, and they've all just been broad forked after that. So it's been no BCS out here, no rotary plows. It's just been forks and rakes for a long time. So it was like a huge amount of labor, and we spread probably in the last year and a half 100 yards plus of compost. Not really ever inverting it after that. I did get a tilther at the end of this season, 2021, and that's made a huge difference for being able to work that bit of compost into a little bit of topsoil. It's been a game changer for baby greens and stuff like that, especially. It's one thing to have transplants going in, but the tilther makes it really easy to cultivate. It's so much easier to keep up with the weeds if you like, or at least out here for me, to set back the thread stage. You hear everybody say it, and it really is true.
Right. So you're kind of doing a little bed prep and then going over it with that tilther and just kind of like a light harrowing of sorts.
Pretty much, yeah. I use a lot of silage tarps. That's how I really started everything after that initial plow of the little block. So I was well into my little season at home, and I would, in years past before I came out to this farm, I would have like maybe 100 plus tomato plants in my yard at home, and I'd be growing Salanova and herbs and all the corners and all this stuff. And so I was, having a lot of fun doing that, buying little things and learning a lot. You can learn a lot just in your backyard over 4 or 5 years. And so then everything after that was just put under tarp and then strung up in broad fork, and it was super low budget. It just took my time. And that was kind of my goal, was to just be able to spend the last season, like the last half of last year and all of this year, just really trying to set this farm up, because we decided instead of doing like a land agreement where I'm paying a rent or something like that, like a lease on this farmland, but we decided to just have a partnership. And so then it kind of made it that I needed to go past the size that I thought I might want to get at, where I could start to make a living at, small vegetable farming. And so we've just been like setting up and putting as much into it as I could for the last year and a half. And we're in a really good spot for 2022 to be a, full-time farm year, and try to pay myself and really make it legit, and hopefully have an employee by the end of the year and all that stuff.
Wow, that's great. Can you give us any details on how the partnership works?
I mean, it's still kind of fluid. We're always just kind of spitballing ideas about stuff. But this farm out here is not necessarily like a family that lives in the house, but like it's like a house of friends and that have become like family, you know. So this property like already kind of had like a community type feel to it, you know. So it's been very warm coming out here, and everybody that has, you know, that lives out here does their part. And I guess I just kind of am trying to fit into that, to where it's an enterprise on this farm where you know, it was a horse farm for 30 years, and as they don't want to take care of as many horses, you know, because it's a lot of work, it's nice to be able to have a little bit of income coming off their pastures if they're going to lay off the horses and stuff. So that's kind of how it came to be. And it's just a percentage split is what we're going to do in the long run. And it's been nice because, you know, it gives me access to land as somebody who, you know, I tried looking at farms for years, but being able to come out here made it so that we could really blow it up and try to earn some cash to put right back into it. And, you know, in the long run, it'll be like a split of cash, but it's also going to be like a thing where I'm going to try to pay myself, hopefully before that, and get comfortable and try to get this business going before it's really a huge percentage split like that. So it's just kind of playing it by ear, honestly.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. I like that there's kind of a different model going on here.
Yeah. I mean, it's not all set in stone just yet, you know, but it's just been a slow growing thing and very comfortable, and it's developed into a good friendship, you know, so it's really nice.
You know, you mentioned there, you know, earlier when you were talking that you'd been a chef at one point, and and also that you did all the backyard gardening, and it sounds like you did a lot of it. Can you, maybe just give us a little bit more of details of your background?
Sure, yeah, of course. Growing up, I was a huge eater. I just loved to, you know, sounds silly, but it's true. And so I just was really always into food, eating out in restaurants. We were never like big gardeners at my house or anything like that. Like there's no farmers in my family and any generation of people I knew, really. And so I decided that it would be fun to go to cooking school. And so I did that out of high school. There was one here in Lexington. So I did that, which was great. You know, it's like I was working full time at night, working in restaurants, going to school full time during the day for a couple of years. You know, you really learn a lot doing something like 80 and 100 hours a week. And so, you know, I did that for a couple of years and moved out to Washington State right after that with my wife when we were 20. And it's pretty easy to find a job working in kitchens. So I just kind of took off running there in Washington State. We lived in Olympia, which is the capital. It's amazing out there. Working in restaurants out there is like totally different than it is in Kentucky, because one of the first places I worked, we had people who would just forage wild mushrooms professionally. They would just bring us like the wildest stuff, just gorgeous, like glowing mushrooms straight from the forest. And there's a lot of altitude change out there, and it's, you know, so someone who really knows what they're doing can really bring you some special stuff like fieldhead ferns and all this stuff. And then we were buying stuff from the Quinault tribe, which is like a coastal tribe out there, and like just like the craziest shellfish and fresh caught salmon and steelhead and all this stuff, sturgeon, just like the wild ingredients we were able to get out there. And so, you know, when you're around those incredible ingredients, it's just something else to be able to work with that, cook that, and eat that, and taste all that stuff as a young cook, you know. And we moved back to Kentucky after living out there for 4 years, and then we moved up to Indiana. My wife got a master's degree offer for free, so we packed up and went up there, worked in restaurants there. And all along the way, you know, I've worked at really cool restaurants for really great chefs, learned a ton. I've worked in meat departments, managing meat departments and cutting meat, grocery stores, bakeries, all sorts of stuff. I just tried to get as much experience as I can ultimately. And I remember being in like a young cook in Kentucky, in Lexington, and there would be farmers coming in and just bringing us stuff that was worlds above anything that we'd be able to get from like the daily delivery truck of all the big box delivery places. And so, I just surrounded by that, was just more and more inspired by that. And so, started planting a little backyard garden way back when, and just, having a little herbs for your dinner or something like that is a huge improvement. It's not that much, but, I think before I started my farm and started an LLC to do it, I probably spent like $500 or $1,000 on like my backyard garden, just out of pocket. It's like, it's kind of crazy. You can really grow a lot of food. So I just decided to do that and try to sell it to chefs, just little by little to pay for my hobby, so to speak. I'd be like picking tomatoes at night. I'll be harvesting Salanova with a headlamp at like 4 o'clock in the morning and stuff like this, just for fun before I'd be going to work and whatnot. Yeah, and then so it just really, I've been had a lot of great opportunities along the way. My parents bought this house not too many years ago in Lexington, and it had like a little glass greenhouse in the backyard. And so this lady raised orchids in it, and so it was just an incredible little opportunity, since I already had this little farm. And so we filled it up with tomatoes and basil and stuff, and I tried lower and leaning in that thing for the first time. I think this is like 20 by 30 or something like that, the greenhouse. And we were growing like 15 and 20 foot long tomato plants inside this little greenhouse. It was incredible to go in there, and just be able to prune it. And I'd be going over there in the dark in the morning and picking it and delivering it. I had a really great buddy of mine who set up one of these little micro farms in his backyard, and we sold that through my LLC before I started coming out to this farm here, which, full time for sure. Like all my yard stuff is pretty much shut down. Last year, my yard was just a mess from having it be all garden before, and then like putting zero effort into it. It was, no grass in my little lot. I live inside the city in Lexington too, so everybody's got green lawns and stuff, and I just have like old scrap lettuce and compost piles and mulch piles everywhere. Pretty awesome. So yeah, that's kind of how I got here. I just fell in love with it. It's just like it's just a good, it's not just another thing for me, but it's just like this wonderful part of the journey. And so whatever this is all going to be for me.
And forgive me if you said this during the conversation, but are you full-time there at DreamTime, or are you doing any cooking still, or what's that look like?
I still have like a little part-time job unrelated to cooking that's 1 day a week, and I've worked it down to that. Like I last summer when I came out to DreamTime, and this was DreamTime Farm before I came out here, so we just decided to call this DreamTime Market Gardens, and that's kind of where our name's coming from. Started like a registered USDA farm and everything like that for 30 years. Yeah, so last summer when I came out, and I was like, okay, I can give this like 2 days a week, and I was still working pretty much full time, like working 40 plus hours in the kitchen at that point. I had my son was born about 4 years ago, and when he was born, I just decided I couldn't work 80 hours, 6 nights a week and all this sort of stuff anymore, like, for his entire life. It's not practical for me to do that. And so I just kind of took more of like a 40-hour cook job, which left me a lot more opportunity to, dabble in some other stuff. And so I met Phaedra out here at the farm, and then I was working, I guess, 4 days in the kitchen at that point. And I did that all through 2021, set up 2 farmers friend hoop houses, got all of our beds and stuff, developed, starting to get them developed. And then when 2021 started, I went down to 3 days in the kitchen, and then 2. And then now I'm just working 1 day part-time. And then next season, hopefully by like April or something like that, I'm just going to, maybe even before, if I can swing it, I'm just going to be full-time on the farm. And, when I'm working 4 days out here, it's like 50 hours. I'm still coming out on days that aren't considered a farm day. Just trying to, it's never felt like a job out here. It's a tree. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll come out to the farm in the dark, and work up until 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, do deliveries, go home and cook dinner and hang out with the fam.
Yeah, that's great.
And so I'm just trying to do that next year, just do it 5-6 days a week out here at the farm, and just kind of grow it. I felt like there was a lot of times where I am kind of getting in my own way this year, just not like in a way holding the farm back because of labor, because I wasn't here enough, and I didn't feel like I'm ready to have anybody really to pay anybody because I can't pay myself just yet. And I don't want to, hire someone for 2 months or 3 months and then put them out after that. I'd like to get it to a point where if I hire somebody, I can keep them on all year. And so that's kind of what I was working towards this year.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned there for a second that once you get done with your day, you kind of do some deliveries, and we didn't really talk about your market yet. What's marketing look like for you? Where's the produce going?
Yeah, like for the first years of all of it, it was all just to chefs, to friends, and which made it really easy. And they're really willing to hear mistakes and not hold it against you or understand that you only got so much space and that it's an experiment. But like if you walk in, if they're your friend or not, like if you walk into a restaurant and you have some fresh cut Salanova or any type of lettuce, like, or any baby green or whatever, I mean, it's worlds above anything they're going to be able to get from anywhere. So people also want it, but so that was clear being a cook. Like when you start to grow in your backyard and you start to get a little bit good at it, and you can see that in a way it kind of markets itself to a chef, and then the problem is just keeping up. And so I just tried to work on those sorts of skills, and then I'm trying to just succession plan, which like I'm still trying to get better at. But it's just been to chef. And then in the beginning of the pandemic, pretty much my yard was full of stuff in March when all the lockdowns were happening, and I had lots of neighbors who were interested in all the produce through the years anyways. And so I started kind of selling to people who were interested in it, and started doing that like every other week. I think it was last year I did it every other week, and I would just text people. And I offered just $20 bags of vegetables and $10 bags of vegetables. And I would just text them what's going to be in it. And I text them like a few days in advance, and I would just, pick it all, deliver it real quick. And then I did that through 2021, which was hectic because I had a lot of stuff in my yard and a lot of stuff at the farm, which is a 20-minute drive for me. So I'd wake up, pick stuff at the house, go out to the farm, pick stuff at the farm, then drive around and deliver it all. No refrigeration or anything. Then in 2021, it's very clear I need a walk-in cooler. So I finally got one built by May, and that really helped a lot because I can, not being able to be here every day, it made it so I can pick something more at its peak and stash it for a day or two, or get ahead when I can. And I started a Squarespace store, online store. And the whole time I've just offered free delivery back into the area where I live. And then any friends or people along the way that have wanted vegetables, I just kind of have built a delivery route for these bags around that ultimately, and through Lexington. And it's all like just between my house and the farm. So it's a 20-minute drive. I never drive more than that, which is nice. It's really nice. And so then this year I also picked up some more chefs, and I tried to get restaurants that are all really close to one another in downtown Lexington, so I can just kind of park my car and walk to these multiple places. Because I'm trying to do deliveries 2 days a week for sure, and sometimes more if people wanted it, which is like a must for chefs. Like they're used to being able to get stuff at least once a day, and there's a company around our region that will deliver to restaurants twice a day. So it's really hard to compete with that availability. So I knew, you got to make yourself more than available to everybody. You got to be in their face about like what you got. And by in your face, I mean like friendly text. And so that's kind of how I've been marketing this year. It's been a huge learning curve, not being a farmer, to go to such a huge scale, And so I kept it pretty tight. And over the years, working in restaurants and getting into the growing, you kind of can look at the invoices and really see like what some of these places might charge for something like baby dill or cilantro and whatnot. And then you can realize how many bunches of that you might be able to grow on even like a 10-foot bed. Like if you have a 10-foot space of baby dill, I mean, you can make a lot of money on that if you can sell that to chefs. So I kind of just started to develop that, and I've always done like lots of parsley, cilantro, dill, sage, all that sort of stuff. I did chives this year for the first time, and that was really great. Like I'll never not have chives ever again. I mean, restaurants will get charged, you know, $15 for that from some of these trucking companies. So that's a great add-on. Like if you can sell somebody baby greens or lettuce and some carrots and tomatoes, and then also sell them a couple few pounds of chives, or just different herbs and whatnot, then it becomes like slightly more lucrative for you to work with just 2 or 3 or 4 chefs. And so I did that this year, and then I'm just trying to expand that a little bit like each year. You know, that's kind of been my whole thing through all of this, is just little by little baby steps. It's just been getting a lot faster this year.
That's awesome. One clarification, you're not doing any delivery fees for anyone that's outside of that neighborhood, or you are?
No.
If you get outside of that neighborhood?
Yeah, no, I just don't offer it. I just,
so it's free delivery?
Yeah, I do free delivery, yeah. And it's just on my route, though. Like, I'm not driving out of my way ever, really. Along this main corridor that the farm is on, there's a handful of people, and so I do those deliveries for free because I'm driving there anyway. And then on the way back, you know, I just take one certain route that, like, my sister lives on, and some friends and people like this who have been really into it from the beginning. It just worked out really. I'm just super lucky to have that happen that way. And then I deliver into my neighborhood, which is only 3 or 4 streets. And so I do like a newsletter, and I put like a little ad in the neighborhood, you know, like little neighborhood newsletter thing that they drop on your door, and got some people signed up for the newsletter through that. And I got that through Squarespace, where I think you get like 3 emails monthly or something like that. And so, you know, I just try to choose like my slim weeks and don't advertise. And that's been going good. You know, I've gotten new customers through that. Social media, I mean, even though I'm not good at it, it surprisingly works really well. You know, people really respond to that. People are really on Instagram a lot, aren't they?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's been a really good platform, both just like for no-till growers for this work, but also for our farm. Like that's where people are, at least for the moment. It used to be Facebook, and now it's Instagram.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe one day it'll be TikTok, and, you know, it slowly seems like it's going that direction, but social media, it's where people are, I guess.
Yeah. And I don't do any delivery fees for restaurants either. And I'm willing to take them whatever they want, because I'm just trying to really like develop those relationships, you know, because like next year, for instance, I really want to make a run at doing salad greens and hit up a lot of restaurants. And so I'm going to grow out like all of those different like one cuts that High Mowing has. There's like 6 or 7 of them, I think. I'm going to just try them all out. And I'm going to try, you know, I got a paper pot this year, and that in combination with this fancy potting mix that I got from Tilth, I heard about on your podcast, from Tilth Soil up in Cleveland, I guess. Mm-hmm. That's worked out great. You know, not every crop worked out great on that for me so far. I mean, because it is a big learning curve on that tool is what I've heard, but that, you know, the lettuce thing is a pretty easy one to get done on the paper pot. And so I'm going to try to use that as a way to expand it. But like, you're leaving a lot of opportunity out there if you're not going to try to sell them other stuff as well. And so I'm trying to balance that kind of going into it, and just plant every week on lettuce, which I had a hard time keeping up with this year just because we had some really brutal hot and dry spots in Kentucky this summer. I felt like we had like a couple like 7-week sections without much rain that really were hard to grow, you know, carrots and lettuce out here. I don't know if you experienced the same thing, because you're like 40 minutes away from me or something.
Yeah, we mostly did. We mostly got rain almost there was like a 4-week period where we went dry in maybe like July. But it was like a ridiculous, we got everything. Like, we got everything that came through. It was one of those years where it was like too wet. And we also were on a wet farm, so it was just like, yeah, we didn't dry out that much. We got one little spell, but yeah, I think there were people around us not that far who were almost in drought territory, and we were drowning. So it was a weird year for that.
Yeah. I struggle with water here because like when I came, I felt like we had everything that we'd ever want on this farm, on this acre that I started on, you know, because there seemed like there was no restrictions. But once we started going, you know, we're tapped into this horse waterer that's attached to the house, right? And so there's just a little tiny copper line that comes in there, and at best I get 5 gallons a minute. And so I can't run more than 2 sprinkler heads at a time. And so it's really hard, even, investing in shade cloth and all that sort of stuff this season. It was hard for me to keep up with lettuce in summer with that because I had a lot, I had the water open like 22 hours a day, full blast, trying to keep it all watered through drip. And so that was a big struggle for me. And so I'm going to try to improve that for next year.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, you all, just jumping in here real quick to get a word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by BCS America. BCS two-wheel tractors are designed and built in Italy, where small-scale farming has been a way of life for generations. Discover the beauty of BCS on your farm with PTO-driven implements for soil working, shredding cover crop, spreading compost, mowing under fences, clearing snow, and more, all powered by a single gear-driven machine that's tailored to the size and scale of your operation. To learn more, view sale pricing, or locate your nearest dealer, visit bcsamerica.com. That's bcsamerica.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Farmers Web. Farmers Web software gives you the tools you need to manage your entire sales process. Built specifically for farmers' needs, Farmers Web helps you to save time, reduce errors, increase efficiency, and provides flexibility for working seamlessly with your whole customer base. Visit farmersweb.com to schedule a demo, try their free account or a 1-month free trial of their paid accounts, and don't forget to check out their free how-to guides on selling online to individual buyers, as well as how to work with such buyers as restaurants, schools, and stores at www.farmersweb.com. All right, back to the show. The one thing you mentioned, I just take a little nerdy digression here. I'm curious what you've learned growing chives. Like, what's the process there? I've never grown them.
I didn't feel like I even did that great, and they were still like a pretty great crop to have. I planted, maybe Dolores, and was the variety. And I planted it just in early March in a brand new bed that had never been tilted or anything like that. It was just tarp, broad fork, and then maybe it had like not even that much compost, like 2 inches of compost on there. I just direct seeded the chives in there as like the seed packet would recommend. And they came up and they were, just luck of the draw with the Jank seeder, I guess. Man, they were like perfect, nice and thick. I got maybe 3 full cuts out of that, and there was 3 50-foot rows on part of a bed. It was like kind of a bigger, it was actually not a 30 inch bed, but it's more like a 4 or 5 foot bed at the end of a block where I had wintertime and rosemary planted as well. So it was just kind of like a little herb block. And they just grew back. And by the time I got to the end of the 50 foot, the beginning was ready to cut again, and it's not uncommon to get $14, $15 for something like that. And so that was really easy because I didn't have to replant it. It did great in the summer heat because it was established already, and it's only we could sell just chives.
Right. I love those crops that if only we could just sell that crop.
Yeah. And it's the time is the same thing. I did those through plugs and put them in, and like that's just an herb I love to cook with and have around for stocks and for all sorts of different stuff. And I've just always had it, so I like it. Chefs love it, and so it's a no-brainer. People will buy it, and if you can offer somebody 4 ounces of time, it's really not a big deal. It holds beautifully, and it's going to come back in the spring real nice.
And an awesome pollinator habitat
definitely.
Too. We grew thyme. It's also interestingly seems like it's kind of it's got some sort of like anti-weed properties because I've noticed that even you'll get some grasses and stuff that'll grow through it, but it seems to be one of the cleanest, or on our last farm, we just moved, so we don't have it's not fully established yet, but it was always like the cleanest spot right underneath the thyme. And in the spring when it starts blooming, it's just beautiful. It was like covered in flies and wasps and bees, and it was just, I loved it.
Definitely. Yeah. I had some dandelions grow up through it one time pretty intensely on one patch that I had. I haven't seen that out here at this farm though. But that was the only thing I could ever think of that really grew in there. You're right about that.
Yeah. We, herbs are funny. Like we never grow that many. We'll grow some cilantro in the summertime because nobody else seems to do it. We grow a lot of basil. And then we always just set those right next to our cherry tomatoes on our farmer's market table. And we can sell a little bit of herbs retail, but farmer's market's always been tough. But I have not really connected the thought of doing it. If you're going to be selling to chefs things like baby greens, having those is just like, hey, do you also need some thyme? Do you also need some chives or parsley? I think that's a really good little add-on.
Yeah, I love having it. I mean, baby dill and cilantro, parsley, curly parsley, flat parsley, like all that is just to be able to pick all that stuff in its prime is like kind of what it's all about for me. You know, and I like one thing that I struggle with for now and probably forever is, I kind of got into it just like for the love of the foods themselves. And so like, I want to have everything here, you know, like I even want, like, I'm even like brainstorming on how to set up my own, fruit orchard out here and just try to do it on the cheap, you know, like grow out my own rootstock and graft scion wood onto it to try to learn that craft of that and, you know, be able to produce that stuff for a little bit better price. But I know like it's not going to be the best idea for me to put in 300 asparagus rounds out here, but I just know myself well enough to know that I'm going to do it and that I want to have that stuff because, I mean, to go to the farmer's market, like, you know, you sell at the farmer's market that's closest to me. It just seems like what an amazing thing to be able to go down there and find like asparagus in season and all that sort of stuff. And like, I want to have all that at my fingertips to offer, not just like for me and my family and everything, but for chefs too. And so there's like a scale there that, you know, you got to like take it up over there or figure it out. But, you know, it's just really exciting to me to have like the full spectrum of offerings, all the perennials and stuff. It's just amazing. Fruits. But I mean, there's a lot of people struggle with fruits in Kentucky, I guess, you know?
Yeah, we're not I mean, most of the common fruits, apple, you know, we can grow pears really well here, but things like apples are kind of tough. All the stone fruits, the peaches and that sort of, they can grow here a little bit, but like once every few years, maybe you'll have a decent year.
Yeah.
Grapes, all that stuff. It's like, it's just not a great, because our humidity just makes it really difficult for fungal diseases.
Yeah,
tough. Yeah, it's tough. Watermelons, I guess, that sort of stuff we can grow well, but perennial fruits are a little tougher.
Yeah, we had some incredible cantaloupes this year out here.
Yeah, that's a good one that we can grow really well here. I always like doing various muskmelons. Yeah. We don't do them that often because they're not super profitable,
right.
But
absolutely, I figured that one out this year.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a point there that if you got them, you know, I've seen people doing smaller muskmelons on trellises and stuff, and you could maybe get that to work, but it's a lot of work for not a lot of profit.
Yeah, it's a lot to set up a trellis and clean it up.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, I think if you've got some landscape fabric and some space, just throw it down, throw them in, have some cantaloupe, and then get to pay for your labor and seed, and you're good to go. You know, if you like eating it, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, and dill was a funny one too that you mentioned, because that's another one we get asked at the farmer's market, like by, you know, maybe like 3 times a year. Somebody will come up and say like, do you have dill? I can never find dill. And it's just because you know, it's hard. I don't know. It's one of those things that chefs love it because chefs know how to use it. Chefs are going to utilize it a lot throughout their menu. The average farmer's market customer may love it and may use it, but is not something that they are it's not in high demand in that population. So, but it's a great crop. I love growing dill. Anything that's like a cilantro, dill, you know, basil, any of those herbs, once they're done being the herb, then they become these amazing flowers for pollinators. So I love that combo.
Yeah, they have a pretty great picking window too. I feel like, I mean, cilantro and dill will bolt pretty quick, but like you can end up cutting some baby dill off a pretty high patch of dill, especially if you've already cut it once. You know, so it does regrow as well. Pretty good.
Yeah, and the dill flowers, I mean, it's got multiple marketing opportunities there, because once it gets to flowers, then you can sell those for pickles and stuff.
That's true.
So you know you can get a few cuttings, let it go to seed, and then sell some flowers, and then if you let it go all the way to seed, you can probably sell some dill seed. So yeah, multiple options there. So that's cool. I like getting more than one crop off of a crop.
Absolutely.
Like you said, you've kind of worked in restaurants, and you sort of touched on these when you were talking about it, but like, are there things that you've learned with that perspective of having worked in the restaurant, but also on the farmer's side, about working with chefs, of like getting in the door, or like just, you know, I mean, you mentioned kind of staying on top of it and making sure that you get them what they need and being accessible. But like, is there anything else you've learned in terms of how you get in the door and how you, build those relationships with chefs?
Yeah, I guess like the one thing that I would say on that for sure is something to think about would be like, if you're trying to work with the restaurant, is that you should be trying to do a little bit of research, not just on like their menu and what they're using to make sure it's compatible with what you want to grow, but that restaurant is probably chef owned or chef driven restaurant. Because like, if someone wants to open a restaurant, like, it's not a very profitable venture typically. And so you know, you want to find somebody who has like a whole lot of passion for what they're doing, someone who's really excited about the actual food and not necessarily like a franchise type restaurant. And that's not slamming them, because some of them love local produce, but who really loves the local produce are like the chefs who that like they're a little bit more like a little bit more of like an individual, you know, like someone whose menu has more personality than just a wedge salad and a Caesar salad. Like those are the kind, and that stuff's great. And there's room for all of that stuff on our farms too, you know, for romaine and whatnot. But like someone who can, like, you want to try to pick someone who's going to appreciate the micro season, the, you know, like the little availability of something, and someone who's excited to be able to utilize that in their restaurant, not that it's going to be a 2-week window, so it's not worth changing an item or something like that. You know, like the chefs who want to do specials, who have nightly specials, the chefs whose menu changes seasonally. Like those are the places you want to start with, because those are the people who love the ingredients enough to want to, like, you know, cook beets in the winter in their restaurant. Like it's not super easy to cook a beet in a restaurant. It's like a long time for a prep cook to roast and prep a bunch of beets and dice them up, you know, for example, which is also an interesting situation to be in as a small grower, because like I personally struggled with baby greens this year, because it's kind of a newer thing for me, because I got the quick cut harvester. But, you know, not being out here every single day, it's kind of hard to pick them at the exact time, like just when they're dry. I know that's something that I think I heard Ray Tyler talk about on your podcast, was really being able to cut those baby greens like when they're just dry in the morning time, you know. And so I had trouble with that because I don't have a real salad spinner yet. I'm just using like the 5-gallon crank. And so if I do a baby green and they're field grown and they're a little bit dirty, I got to wash them, but I just can't get them dry enough.
Mm.
And so, you know, you just kind of got to take the scale and like just think about like how many covers the restaurant is going to do as well. That really does matter. Because if there's a restaurant and they're doing 200 covers a night and like they sell a lot of like little salads, they're going to just like blow through those baby greens, and they might not really have the prep time already built into their restaurant for a prep cook to come in and hand wash and pick through the baby greens, you know? And so these like one cut lettuces that are out, like the Salanovas and the you know, all those sorts of things, like the head mixes, those spin a lot easier in a 5-gallon spinner and come out drier than a baby green does. They're much tougher and like, but still, you know, a wonderful texture. Like that's like the preferred green for pretty much any chef anyways. Like most people would rather have that like buttery green crisp, you know, type texture and mix and visual appeal and loft on their plate than a bunch of baby greens for the most part. And like baby greens have their own like certain flavor profile that chefs appreciate, you know. But as a base, it's really hard to beat that. Walking into a restaurant, you know, they just eat it up, man. Assuming that they're ready to pay for it, you know, because it is going to be a little bit more expensive than what the big trucks are bringing in, but a totally different product, you know.
Right. Yeah.
It's just it's a hard thing. You got to kind of like digest the menu a little bit too, and see what they're using. You know, like if they have the word dill and stuff like that on their menu, they're probably using it as much as they can. You know, there's a lot of restaurants that you would never even see an herb name on the menu.
This is sort of the same question, I feel like, but it's kind of different. Like, having been a chef, is there things that you've seen farmers do that you now avoid doing? Like when it comes to actually bringing the produce or, you know, working with the chef in general, like, are there things that you're like, oh, okay, that I can see why that farmer didn't work well in this situation. Is there anything like that that stands out?
One thing that comes to mind, like straight off, is like leftovers. Like restaurants don't really want to see a farmer come with leftovers, like after a farmer's market or something like that. You know, they want to, you know, be catered to. That's what they do, is they cater to other people. And so, yeah, you know, like I'm just always texting them. If I'm going to be out of something that they have been getting, I try to tell them in advance. Let's see, the things that I've seen farmers do. I just think that in our region in Kentucky, there's not enough farmers just kicking around in these restaurants, honestly. And that's another reason why I got so into it. There's, there's a lot of farmers who like will just come once or twice. And if you want to make the sale, you got to like kind of be persistent on it. And so that's a mistake that farmers make too. It's like you may have to try to like court them for like months before it happens. Like drop them off lots of free samples. That's worked for me a couple times where I'll drop some stuff off and they seem kind of interested, and then I will try to pick at them a little bit and be like, well, what are you paying for that, or are you interested in this, or do you buy anything local already? Like if they're saying no, then it's probably going to be hard to get in there. I tried to sell some. I planted just way too many beefsteak tomatoes this year because with all the different stuff I had going on, I planted Galahad and BHN 589 next to one another to just kind of see the differences. And I just have way too many slicers. And I tried to sell them to like this multiple places, and just it's hard to compete with something like that as a small farmer. Like you're not going to be able to, pick beefsteaks out of your farmer's friend and sell them for $1. So that's not really related to what you asked me though, Jesse. Sorry.
No, but it is. It's like it is. One of those. Maybe it's one of the. You're using yourself as the example of a mistake that could be made, or something that like in a situation where you're trying to sell a lot of tomatoes, and you have a surplus of something. It's good to already have those relationships established, so you can just go to them and be like, I have a bunch of tomatoes, and too many. Is there anything we can do to like work out? Is there something any way you could use them?
Yeah, that happens. Like I have one of my best buddies is a chef that buys from me, and like he'll happily buy a row of Romas out, and roast them and freeze them and put them on like a sandwich or whatever. It's like worth developing those relationships for that, because that not only is like a sale for you, it's kind of fun for them in a way, to be doing something different in the kitchen, which can get like really repetitive. And it opens up a bed faster for you too, if you at least try to get them out of there, because you're not helping yourself if you can't flip the bed, if it's just sitting there. And that happened to me a couple times this year, where I was just didn't have enough time and all that to get it all picked,
Farmers, chefs that buy from farmers oftentimes just inherently learn to understand the nuances of seasonality. And I do think that's fun to an extent. Like I think about that. I think it was in the Dan Barber book where he talks about, it was just like an overload of asparagus, and he had bought a bunch of asparagus, and maybe a sous chef had bought a bunch of asparagus, but everybody got back to the restaurant and they just had just way too much asparagus. So they just made a bunch of asparagus dishes, and that was kind of revolutionary, or like definitely changed like the way he thought about food. And I think that was like, I just think that's like, maybe it's fun for them. And also another thing you touched on that I think was interesting, because I think it was Evan Chender that said it, the Culinary Gardener episode that we did. Just chefs like, they're very into how things look in presentation. And so when you can present your food in the same way that they're going to present their food to a customer, when you present your food to them that way, that's really attractive to them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I love what he's got going on over there, man. I think that Asheville's food scene is much more advanced than Lexington, Kentucky's is for now.
Uh-huh.
And, I'm jealous that he can grow all that stuff and sell that. That's amazing. His farm's incredible.
Yeah, it's got some really great stuff going on. And I mean, I think it does help too to have the farmers there too, because I think, Kentucky has a lot of kind of older school farmers, but there's just now starting to be this, growth. And I'm sure Kentucky's similar, if somebody else is in a different area, like Lexington is 300,000 people, where, it has a pretty big college at the University of Kentucky. So there's probably a lot of those kind of places around the United States. It's not mega cities. It's not the biggest city in the state. It's just kind of this like large city that has a lot of potential. But yeah, there's, as the farmers come up and as the food scene kind of grows up with it, it sort of snowballs. It seems like it's getting rapidly faster. It went from being like maybe one or two restaurants that I was excited about in Lexington to like more than I can visit right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's getting much better.
And that's happened over just the last decade.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and even more like this in the last few years, probably, it's been really, really nice to see. There's like a lot of smaller restaurants that are doing really cool stuff in Lexington, and they're not always necessarily in their own brick and mortar, and that's also a super exciting part of the food world for me. Like, 'cause the overhead in restaurants is really intense. And to see like restaurants that are taking up little corners in other businesses and stuff and doing really cool stuff is awesome. And one thing I forgot to mention earlier was when we were talking about outlets and selling these veggie bags, I also opened up the farm for people to come out and pick them up, which doesn't have a whole lot of people. We don't really have a whole lot of foot traffic on that because I haven't really advertised on it super hard and all that. But that's also an important part of it for me, is just trying to have this like organic produce available for anybody who wants it. Like, that's important, and that's not always available for people, even in big cities like this. So I think it's a great time to be getting into the farming movement. It's really needed. Yeah, and it's just wonderful.
Yeah, and as those markets grow too, the restaurants grow, the markets grow, there's more demand. Like, I don't feel like, as long as we've been doing this and as many farmers as I've kind of seen pop onto the scene, like certain things maybe have more competition, like carrots for us have had more competition recently.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, we're still doing good numbers, and as good of numbers and generally better than we've ever, like, it's not where the competition's not taken away. Like, the whole thing just keeps growing. And I think that's really exciting to me when I think about that, in terms of wanting to bring in more farmers and build the community here, but in the community anywhere that's like Lexington, that's like Kentucky, of farmers. I think there's more potential than maybe is realized.
I think you're right about that, man. When I was looking at as I'm always looking at trying to expand stuff, like, people always ask, why not the farmers market? And like, you're at my local farmers market, and there's a bunch of really great small growers there too. There's Salad Days and High Five and Elmwood and Rough Draft and there's a bunch of people down there, and I just feel like there's a lot of other opportunities out there too, that we just maybe haven't even thought of or tapped into.
We have a guy here named Leo, and he's kind of like a connector. Are you working with that too, like having people that you're selling to that are selling to chefs, or that are you doing that sort of wholesale side at all? Is there anything that you're working with on that end?
No, not yet. I was when I had that little glass greenhouse with tomatoes and basil, I was selling Leo some basil that he was selling at the farmers market. And I love Leo. Yeah, I met him in 2005, and he was just in this restaurant all the time, bringing in all this other product from farmers all over Kentucky, and it just seems like he knew everybody, and he knew about like all the seasonalities, and he's bringing in just gorgeous asparagus and onions and peaches and just all this amazing stuff, and we just, he's like really developed a relationship with chefs around here. And so that's been going on for like a generation before me. So there's a lot of chefs around who are used to seeing him, and places that are used to seeing him. So it's kind of like he laid this amazing groundwork for Lexington, because he sells at the farmer's market. He's a garlic farmer, and he's an incredible fellow, him and his wife. But no, I haven't started yet. I want to.
It's cool to have those connectors too, because that's like another side of it that, opens up potential for selling to restaurants. And, one of the things that kind of comes to mind in this transition from farming, from being a chef to kind of stepping back the chef, but wanting to increasingly become a full-time farmer. Have there been challenges in that? I mean, not just necessarily financially, but like, are there challenges that you've kind of run into either physically or just mentally, or anything that, or maybe it's not a challenge. Maybe it's become somewhat of a smooth transition. You mentioned how much you enjoy that work, but like, what's that transition been like generally?
I guess I know myself well enough to know that I'm not a night person. Like, I fell asleep at 7:45 the other night, not uncommon. And so working until 10 o'clock in a restaurant was always a challenge for me. And so I felt like that was actually kind of a relief for me to change my hours. And I'm got a lot more like energy and get up at 5 a.m. than 5 p.m. And so, like the physical part of it has been nice. I really enjoy the physical work of farming. You know, like I said, there's no tractor lifting any of my compost stuff. I shoveled 100 yards. My dad's out here helping me out all the time. So, you know, we we did like a lot of brute labor together. Um, I guess I feel like one of the challenges would just be setting up a farm like this. You really got to know a lot, like a little bit about a lot of stuff. And so I've learned a lot. I set the whole farm up off of, up until this spring, off a 4-foot nursery shelf in the spare bedroom in my house. And so it made sense that, you know, when I was doing all the stuff in my yard, I just had 4-foot grow lights on one of those metal shelves in a spare bedroom. And I'd be growing my tomatoes and, you know, all my lettuces in there. And I did that all of last year for the farm. And I set up the farm this spring off doing the same thing. And one of the big challenges was just the infrastructure, walking onto a bare field. And like, there is definitely some knowledge that I needed, but you know, when you are trying to do it cheap too, wiring up a greenhouse is like kind of an intimidating thing to do. You know, setting up a farmer's friend kit, not knowing anything about greenhouses ever before is, you know, that's a little bit intimidating to get started, but you just got to kind of get after it, you know.
Yeah.
There's just normal challenges. It's been a treat. I love a challenge, and I've always liked moving on to the next thing. Probably why I've done so many jobs. When I was in cooking school, one of the chefs that I really admired was saying to us, he said, in the first 10 years of your career, you should probably, you know, not work in any one place for more than a year, because you're going to learn pretty much like what you're going to learn in a year at any restaurant, and then just move on. If you want to like go real big with it and get as many skills as you can, you got to like kind of make those sacrifices in your younger years. And so it was no like really big, crazy jump for me, because I've switched jobs, even job types and stuff before. And it felt so right all along the way. And I was able to kind of ease into it more than I've ever eased into anything else as well. You know, I've been into growing stuff in my backyard for, you know, 10 plus years and so on, you know, just feels right.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Zach Selby, thank you so much for your time. And this has been a great conversation. I've absolutely enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. I love all the no-till growers expansion you guys are doing with the podcast. You guys make it totally possible for farmers like me to be successful, to be able to listen to all that stuff, watch the videos, and just kind of helping with the small farm culture. It's awesome. Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, well, thank you. We're excited to do it always. All right, if you enjoyed that episode, make sure to follow DreamTime Market Gardens on Instagram and all the places. We will hook it up with links in the show notes. Also, you can support our work at no-tillgrowers.com by picking up a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook. Proceeds from that sale at no-tillgrowers.com go to making you more free content. Venmo us a little thank you to at no-tillgrowers, or PayPal to no-tillgrowers@gmail.com. All that works too, and we super duper appreciate it. And of course, patreon.com/no-tillgrowers. Thank you however you find a way to support our work. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you are getting it and leave a review. But this week, all reviews must be made with fresh pasta, because there just is no comparison. Today's episode was brought to you in part by a grant from Southern SARE. Big thanks to Jackson Roulette for all of his work, Josh Satin for his video guidance, Willie Breeding for the theme music, and of course my amazing, amazing, amazing wife, Hannah Crabtree, for all that she does. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Quick, before we get started, these wood chip dudes just showed up again.
Oh, really?
We were messaging about